All right, good morning, people. Bob here, back on Tuesday. Ready to break down some Bitcoin. Let's get right down to it. Daily chart in front of us here. You probably noticed that yesterday was fairly uneventful, right up until sometime overnight there. We'll get in on the closer time frames here. But yeah, it just kind of really, I think just in the last few hours, in fact, it just kind of came off the rails a little bit there. And this was always going to be the expected retest location, somewhere right around this, 23, 3, 23, 2 in this area. You wanted to see this thing come back down and retest this level right here. So we're getting that at the moment. Now we just got to see some push, right? Like now we need to see some push, or this thing potentially, I talked about it yesterday, kind of looking at the RSI. We had rejection 1, rejection 2, and then I said probably we're going to get rejection 3, come back down, and hopefully that this thing just kind of turns into a bit of an ascending triangle, right? That if you kind of took this section right here specifically, let's get out of this and I'll show you. If you took this specific section here, and that could become a ascending triangle of sorts. I mean, you could even say that it goes back realistically as far as here, and into a little ascending triangle. Now that's really the last line of defense, though, right? So I'm going to make sure I'm very clear on something here. Again, this is the 236 fib level, and it may not be perfect, but it's pretty damn close in terms of where the actual location of that is. And again, that's a 236 based on the fall from the $40,000 before we came out of this bear flag here, okay? So I'm using that, and what I've done is every time we've put in another lower low, I've just gone ahead and updated the actual location of the Fibonacci chart. So the 236 used to be right here, and then I moved it down to accommodate all this. Now what's been happening is each time the 236 has been rejecting the price action. Now, and to be clear, it's not like it's happened a ton of times, although I could probably tell you that there's a good chance this was rejected close to a 236 as well. That probably actually got a 382. But either way, essentially the Bitcoin and the price action here, it hasn't been able to escape this pit of despair, right? Like, it's been pretty well constant recently that it's just been getting beat down once it gets to this level. And here, again, we've got 1, 2, 3 rejections. Absolutely has to bounce off of here today, or this thing comes off the rail. And then the only save would be if we double bottomed on the daily outside of this pattern and outside of this trend line. That would be the one scenario that would take place, where if we fell out of here, maybe we double bottom, say like right here, and then recover. That would be the one scenario where this would be okay to fall out of here, because again, that would at least give us a retest of this level. Because technically on the daily, we have not really retested this level as support. It's like 21,895, 21, 6-ish is where the bottom of this pattern basically lies. It hasn't been retested yet, because you've got these days here, this never really retested. You got this retest right here, I guess, from this push up. But otherwise, from a daily standpoint, low, higher low, higher lows. We've got a higher low here, but again, it has never actually tested this level right here. It's just every time it's either gotten rejected by it, or this one time it found support. So if we do get rejected here and it falls off this little trend line here, then that's what we want. We want a positive retest here, and we go up. There are a couple different things that I'm looking at here that are potentially problematic, and ultimately they've been that way since here. This was nice that we got this recovery, but this was never a given, I don't think. This is really the primary price action. You can see all the volume that came in there, and then really this chunk of 4 days or so hasn't been massive volume. There have been a couple days where it was pretty good, but otherwise it's been pretty nominal volume heading up into that overhead resistance again. And really it would make sense because you don't necessarily want to be max trading way up here at this resistance. You'd be better off waiting for it to be broken, retest it, and then go ahead and go heavier there. Right now, I mean, it's just there hasn't been a good enough reason immediately, at least, to believe this thing was just going to pop up over there. And I say that with the idea that I had a bullish bias. I was looking for it, but again, this level, this 236, has been problematic for some time now. So long story short here, got to hold this level, and we got a lot more time in the day to go. Now, if you lose that level, there are two different things I'm looking at. So let's zoom out for a second on this chart. And again, keep in mind we've got this big, the green here. It's a parallel channel. It just makes it easy to make sure that you've got lines that are, it's parallel channel. Like these are perfectly parallel to one another. And then it's got this mid split here. And we've talked about that several times. Well, right now the price action is over top of it, right? It's just barely, but it is over top of it. And here it had claimed it and then lost it, broke back above it. Now we're right here. Now we break back below this thing, and then if I guess the short version of this is that if we do start to lose kind of this section here, so like 22,000 up to 24, if we actually do fall out of this, I mean, it's almost a given that you're coming back here. Okay, it's nearly a given that this is going to come back into play. And then the other thing is too, we do kind of, again, similar to how this one double topped, we do really have a double top here too. Now the measured move for the double top does not come down here, but the measured move for the double top potentially, at least, let's say it's just a small one, even that one brings us back down to the bottom of the pattern, maybe gives us another opportunity to put a back tap in here. But I do see one problem with that, is that we've already back tested it. So do we get a second back test if it does fall back through here? I don't know. And then if if that doesn't end up being a good good quality back test there, then again we are in fact back down here at this 17.6 level, based on a fall out of this bear, what could potentially be a bear flag still, right? We've had this parabola, so you could say that it was a parabola right up until the point that it could not break through this. And I've seen this happen on different coins several times in the past. You're looking, you're thinking, all right, it's going to break out. And then the last time I saw this happen on a coin, and I was waiting for a breakout above a level, this thing it actually ended up breaking all the way back down into probably pretty damn close to what this would be on here. And the only issue that I would see with any of that is that so many of these levels have already been back tested that the likelihood that we come back and we get another positive, and this is none of this to say this would all happen in a day, but you can only get so many tests of a level before the buyers get exhausted. So when you get to, so we had the multiple taps here, we've had multiple taps here. Like I said, we've still yet to tap back and actually have any support at this level. So I think this one stands a chance of holding up. But anything else below that, and you've already back tested this guy. You already back tested this guy. And I mean, this one had 3 bounces right here at this 19.2 level. So again, you start to lose these levels up here that haven't really been back tested yet. And all of a sudden, you've already got levels that have been back tested multiple times in what could potentially be the start of a downtrend. That's problematic. This thing could just, fall right through all these levels potentially. Now, hopefully it doesn't go that way. But again, I think there's some feasibility there, if nothing else. Let's zoom in on the weekly real quick. And, we've been getting everything we've wanted and or needed from the market. Now the only question is, can we continue to get what we need from the market? And let's hide all the drawings here. It's a tough one. This doesn't look good, right? I mean, that doesn't look good. It's just kind of sitting there like that right now. There is one thing I could tell you that, and I've seen this plenty of times in the past too. When you get these doji candles, so say you can either have a downtrend or an uptrend. But I see it much more often when I'm looking in for the uptrends. You get these candles that after you get some movement one direction or the other, you get this little doji candle, and the open and the close are dead identical heights on the two candles. Sometimes this third candle, parabolic downside, or in the case of the upside version, after some downtrend, you do get a parabolic move to the upside. So keeping to the idea that could be what happens here, it would happen at some point this week, certainly. And potentially this thing just drops right back into this level. And this would be the most logical place for it to happen if it goes that way, right? And again, I'm not saying it will. Just keep in mind that this is a feasibility. Probably not entirely dissimilar from, I think this would be a good one right here. You get these candles that just close at the same level, and all of a sudden you get these parabolic moves out of those candles. And you can see this one. I mean, you can't see it when I'm looking at a weekly, but this thing popped up quick and then sold right back off. Similar kind of concept again to what this is. So maybe it is something where this thing pops down into a different level here and then gets bought right back up. And I was actually saying that to Matt the other day. I wouldn't be terribly disappointed if it did come back down and put in an actual retest where it closes out a week right back down here, as opposed to, for instance, like this one where it tapped and then went a true double bottom close. Now it's August 9th right now. We talked about the idea of maybe a double bottom on the monthly chart as something that could be a feasibility. Obviously, that means we got to come back down and retest 20K basically, but I don't know. I mean, take into consideration the idea that could be a feasibility, and then again, maybe same concept. You actually come back down, just tap it and go again. That's a tough one. Tough to say. We didn't get any kind of bullish engulfing candle here to engulf the month prior. So it would be, in reality, this downtrend is intact still, right? If you dropped a line here, then, potentially somewhere all the way back up here is a good high. But again, we got to figure out what's going on here. And it's just tough to say at the moment. The stochastic RSI on the monthly is curled up. The MACD histogram is not showing any signs of relenting at the moment, even after this incredible month of volume right here, after all that downside, like this huge month right here, right? But again, the histogram is showing zero signs of relenting at the moment. And, you come back over here, though, and you look at this and say, all right, well, this one didn't show any signs of letting down. And yet immediately following that month, you started to actually lose momentum to the upside, right? So I guess that might be the one thing, would be that this can flip around pretty quickly. But again, it all starts with just holding this level and taking off. And it just doesn't look... it doesn't look as promising as it has the last several days, week, whatever the case may be. So we're going to see. I mean, ideally, it would be still nice to get back up to this level, even if it's just a pop and then a sell-off. But, right now, again, 22.3 basically, and we're in serious danger of losing, a pretty important support level right here. And again, you lose that, You break back in here, you have to assume that you stay within the pattern until you don't. And again, we've already had multiple retests down here on this trend line. So again, the feasibility of losing it shortly here becomes a lot more pronounced, perhaps. So, we'll see. We'll see. Again, this is the bearish downside for the moment, or as far as this bullish upside, again, right all the way up here, realistically. And which one's it going to be? Well, we're going to find out real quick. But again, the rejection here at this level isn't great, but we got to hold this line right here, or at the very least, if it is going to come down and maybe put a retest at this level, just let's kind of just cascade over here until boom. And think about that. Just kind of look at the date range at the bottom there. If Bitcoin just kind of comes through here and puts in, maybe like a kind of like a little downside push here a few different times, you'd almost end up with something. Let's say we got that one right there. That's one. Then let's say we get another one right here. And that'd be, say, two. And then a third one basically right here. And then in that particular instance, you'd get 3 subsequent lower lows. But this is essentially kind of a little bit of a Wyckoff accumulation look, where you're putting in subsequently lower lows, but ultimately once you're done with this low, boom, blast off time. And it would probably, if it maintained that, then we would probably actually see a recovery all the way up to this level, would be my assumption. And you could see where the daily 200 is moving in there. By the time it gets over to the price action, if it was over here, down here, it probably is somewhere in this range or this range. Now all of a sudden that 29.5 looks good, and then all of a sudden you got a chance that you can really recover some serious ground, and even almost call this maybe something of a Wyckoff accumulation with the downside pushes. So I see a lot of different things that could come into play here, and it's all gonna tell its story here real soon. But everything moved fairly slowly yesterday, just to see some wicked downside really early this morning or overnight. So let's actually, speaking of, let's zoom in on that. You probably remember looking at the 4-hour chart yesterday. It was up here, getting decent bounces. It was looking all right. And then all of a sudden, right before this candle closed on the hourly, it fell just below what I was looking at as kind of a key level of support. And then you see here, you kind of had buyer exhaustion going on right at this 23,610 level. And then really, if you're looking at the real short-term time frames here on this part, there was no question what was going to happen. I just happened to be waking up at the time myself. So, this was not the kind of candle that we wanted here, long story short. Now we got some different trend lines that we could be back testing, and this thing could still form into maybe like a big falling wedge right here. But it's got, it all starts with maintaining this level. So maybe here today it does come back into this 23,000-ish range, and then maybe we get some sort of recovery. But if it continues to put in subsequently lower highs, then we're probably going to end up with something very similar to this setup over here, where you get these big downside pushes, upside, big downside, upside, big downside, and it'll probably be something like that if in fact we're going to get kind of a little bit of a falling wedge type look out of here. Now these falling wedges, though, recently haven't been treating us so well. I mean, this one did. We ended up bouncing out of there nicely. But in general, I would say that a lot of times, especially where you're looking for support down here, when we've started into these falling wedges, I feel as though we haven't really been finding the support. We get a breakout, it ends up being a fake out. Hell, this might have been, we might even go as far as to say that this itself was a fake out, right? That, we had this little falling, broadening wedge sort of similar to this one. Or even this guy here. We had this larger, so the yellow top, yellow bottom, falling wedge, broadening wedge. We broke out of it. If we do not find support here, you can assume that we will absolutely come back down to this level. which wouldn't be terrible either necessarily, because we, at some point we're going to have to come back down and retest this 200 simple on the 4-hour chart. And if we want upside continuation, the likelihood is we at the very least need to put a touch on it. If you fall below it, though, you get the crash pattern and then potentially much more downside. Or ideally, it just goes ahead and it would find some support right here, maybe 21,530, and then recover back up that way. And again, you got some things that would tell you this would be logical, because again, that puts you right back down at the bottom of this rising pattern that we've had. This trend line that has held up for over a month now, 6 weeks or whatever it is at this point, this trend line. But goodness, you don't like the way that this is coming back down out of here. You can't really like that at all. The last time we came down out of the overbought territory, it looked more like this, where it didn't fall way down there. I mean, you can see already this is going into, it's trying to work its way into bearish territory. This thing may just keep dropping right off the rails here, but again, this was a 4-hour downtrend that was reasonable. This one was reasonable. This was obviously reasonable. This is not a good start to this 4-hour downtrend. But again, if we come back down, break through this, let's just go ahead and assume we're coming down here. So at this point, and by no means do I think this happens today. Maybe it doesn't happen at all. Maybe we actually break up here, retest this, and then go. But again, you got to be at least cognizant of the idea that you do come down here and absolutely blow through a bunch of support levels. I mean, you just got to be aware of it. So let's get the hourly, and again, you can see just how vicious this was once it decided that it really was going to lose this level here, this 24K level. And then really also this like 23,700. I mean, you can see 1, 2, 3 hours later, we're down, $400 or $500. On this chart, again, same concept. I mean, I put this trend line in here to kind of represent the more recent price action, and the idea that if we do get kind of an ascending triangle look out of this section here, that's what we want to hold. And again, you can already see, I mean, it's already basically losing that trend line. I could adjust it a little bit to accommodate maybe a little better, but I mean, it is otherwise essentially lost already. So now we just got to look for oversold bounce on the hourly here. That should be coming before too long. Again, you can look back through the course of time, and it's not that often that you get like so massively oversold. I mean, it does happen, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't happen frequently where you get so massively oversold that it just gets buried in there. There were times, obviously, we've been there, but it's not all the time. Now, again, if this thing is just going to come off the rails, that hourly RSI is just going to get buried in the ground, probably right up until the point in time where the 4-hour catches up with it and goes way oversold as well. And frankly, it's already way down into neutral territory. It will cross into bear territory here in just a few points on the RSI. So really looking for a nice bounce here very soon, or again, this thing may just keep tanking right down into the ground. Again, I just this level here, we just couldn't beat it. And then had this big fake out here. That was where you figure it might have dragged you way down all the way immediately, and then suddenly Bitcoin puts in this kind of rounded pattern. So this essentially probably is a bullish fake out here. I mean, if I'm looking at it realistically, after we had this bullish fake out, this one should have dragged us back all the way down to the bottom of the pattern. It didn't. Another bullish fake out. This one's probably the one that dragged us back to the bottom of the pattern. So that's really, I guess realistically, that's probably what I will be looking for at this stage. Just with the idea that, again, those 3 attempts there, we're already kind of losing the ascending triangle uptrend that we would need to hold. So again, unless we get some sort of double bottom outside of these levels and recover, I'm looking for it at this point to come back down here. it's all about support and resistance. You keep it, and this is what happens. You lose it, this is what happens, and that's just how you got to look at it. And if I'm looking around the rest of the market too, I'm seeing a lot of things that would make sense that we're due for a little bit of a downtrend here. Not necessarily an extensive one, but again, retests and or a slight downtrend. So that it's not coming as a massive surprise either. Even though, again, we want to maintain our bullish bias when it makes sense. Now, at this exact moment, it doesn't necessarily make a great deal of sense. And I talked to Matt about this. I mean, we've just been failing to put in higher highs for quite some time. I mean, this is, right here. This was August 8th, so that was yesterday. And this was July 30th. So, I mean, it was a full week where we failed to put in a higher high. And then we made another swing attempt at it, and it did not exceed this high. So now we've got, failure to put in higher highs for a full week. This downside makes total sense and potentially gets worse from here. Again, unless we can maintain trend lines and or supports that are there. That's pretty much what I got for you today. I know it probably seem kind of borderline repetitive on that. I mean, at the end of the day, just kind of looking at the chart, seeing what we're seeing, and just kind of letting you know the potential. Could it still come up here? Sure. And let's pretend for 1 second that this is a valid falling wedge now, that we are in fact going to break out of there, and let's just say it happens right over here. Again, you're still failing to put in a higher high there. So right now it looks pretty likely we've got some sort of downtrend starting for however long it's going to last. And let's just put that as kind of the cap there. Hopefully it will hold this line. Hopefully it will hold here. And then we fill this part in. Otherwise, again, I am looking for much lower figures here, dropping all the way back down into this garbage here. So really would love to see this 382 hold up. Let's not fall below 23K, and let's go ahead and make at least another push back to the upside. Hey, we appreciate you. Pleasure as always. Look forward to catching up. Talk soon.